Hey there, are you trying to heal your body while building a successful entrepreneurial wellness coaching practice at the same time? If so, it can often feel like you're fighting a battle on two fronts. I know because I've been there. My name is Jennifer Ellis Schutz, and as a chronic illness and complex PTSD warrior, I've spent years, decades even, navigating the difficult path of self-healing. At the same time, I've been extremely driven to build an entrepreneurial business that reflects my passions and purpose. So today, as a functional health and lifestyle medicine practitioner and transformational coach, I help others like you do the same thing. That's precisely why we've created this series, Critical Insight for all self-healers and entrepreneurs. In each short, bite-sized episode, either I or my business partner, Sarah, otherwise known as the Organic Dietitian, will share impactful and highly actionable wisdom to help you heal in body, mind, and spirit while building an entrepreneurial life filled with passion, freedom, and abundance without sacrificing your well-being. This isn't going to be about adding more to your plate. Rather, it's going to be all about finding smarter, more strategic, more aligned ways to operate and thrive. So welcome to this very first episode where I'm jumping right into a critical topic that needs to be talked about way more than it is, entitled Stop This Healing Insanity. So if you're ready to break free from the cycles holding you back, you're in the right place. Let's get started, shall we? All right, so what do I mean by stop this healing insanity? Truth be told, the best way that I can describe to you what this means exactly is to tell you a bit of my personal story. So when I found myself deep in what I call the vortex of complex chronic illness, although at the time it was unbeknownst to me as to how complex and how chronic it was. And this was after about 6 or 7 years bouncing around in the conventional medicine community. I finally stepped out of that arena and into the holistic functional health and wellness setting. And it was in that setting that I ran a bunch of cutting edge functional lab tests that ultimately revealed chronic Lyme disease and company, mold illness, and just deeply entrenched dysfunction and inflammation throughout. And upon receiving these diagnoses, I was elated on so many levels. I felt validated. I felt, wow, I finally know what's going on, and now I can implement a plan of attack to treat it, heal, get better, and move on with my life. And I went full force into this. In fact, one of the first things that I did was I packed up my stuff and actually went and moved to a different state. And I was married at the time and was a full-time teacher. I had to leave my home, take a leave of absence from my job and so forth. And I rented an apartment in another state so that I could be close to this very progressive at the time wellness clinic that specialized in treating these complex chronic illnesses, Lyme, mold illness, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and all of this. And it was exorbitantly expensive. I'm telling you, like prohibitively expensive. It was like $1,200 a day. I'm not kidding you. As I would go to the clinic 7 days a week, in two separate sessions, and a morning session for 3 hours, then a break, and then an afternoon session for another 3 hours. And during these sessions, I would undergo all these fancy, elaborate treatments, IV protocols, hyperbaric oxygen chamber, different types of somatic interventions, getting massage, acupuncture, all the things, okay? And I stayed at this clinic for about 4.5 months, all right, while also paying rent on an apartment there. So you can do the math as to how quickly the funds added up. And at this time, I thought for sure that getting well was all about just killing the bugs and detoxing the toxins, doing these protocols. And like I said, that I was going to be well. And so I was like in it to win it, man. I went in head deep, full force. Let's do this. I'm going to get well, put Lyme disease and mold illness behind me. Unfortunately, that did not happen. I might have experienced some temporary improvement during little pockets of time, but after 4.5, 5 months at this clinic, I was not only not well, but I was worse in other ways and very financially traumatized because of the whole financial undertaking of it. And so I came back home, and then I started the long kind of merry-go-round of going from functional practitioner to the next, to the next, to the next protocol. And I was doing everything that I could find and afford. And at the time, it was quite a bit because my husband and I had a double income. And while I was extremely sick, at that time I was high-functioning sick. So I was still able to work. However, I would have to take many days off and periods of leaves of absences. And as the time progressed, I kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. But yet I kept pursuing all of these elaborate treatments and protocols and making appointments and getting on waiting lists to see the next best expert or guru to do the next best treatment protocol, whatever it is, run the next most cutting edge lab to find out what we need to go after next and so forth. And I stayed on this merry-go-round for a long time and spent a lot of money, big money, hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket over many years. And once again, I did see temporary improvement at times, and I would rally and be like, all right, this is it. This is going to be my answer. But it was never sustainable. And each time I had a setback, it was worse than the previous setback. And around and around and around I went. I wonder, can you relate to this? I know that pretty much most of the clients that come my way can relate to this. And I've met a lot of people out there in the online world that can absolutely relate to this. Long story short, this went on for a really, really long time, and it all kind of came to a culmination around 2013 when I reached a point where I was so depleted, so burned out, so traumatized, so stressed out, and so sick that I could no longer continue in my career as a high school teacher. So I had to leave that career and go on disability. And it was at that time that my husband and I realized now we don't have the funds to keep paying for all these fancy treatment protocols. And I had to go digging and find a new way to heal. After spending a long time feeling sorry for myself, thinking I'm just destined to be sick forever. And in that process, I realized that I had been engaging in this healing insanity that is the basis of today's topic. And what I mean by that is that when I realized that I was chronically ill, all right, as I told you, I thought it was all about just killing the one bug or the few bugs that I had and detoxing the toxins. So implementing strictly a biochemical approach, and that I was going to get well. And I did that, but I never got well. And I realized as I started learning more and more about the factors that create illness and what's needed to restore health, I started learning all about terrain theory, and that most importantly, when we find ourselves chronically ill, we need to step back and look at the big picture of our life and become aware of the multitude of factors that primed us and made us a vulnerable host to become a pincushion for chronic infections and toxins and widespread dysfunction to take hold and not let go. And this is when my eyes started really opening to the fact that I had so much accumulated stress and trauma in my body from years of hard living, not embracing radical self-care. I didn't even know what radical self-care really meant at the time. Abysmal lifestyle habits, and I had never optimized the fundamental pillars of health. And by that I mean nutrition, hydration, daily restorative movement, postural and breathing patterns, connection with the rhythms of nature, so circadian rhythm balancing, mindset, and all of the things. I thought I was doing these because, I would go to these functional health practitioners and they would kind of give me a handout, tell me that I needed to practice stress reduction and, here, avoid gluten and avoid dairy and so forth. So I would do these things, but I never reached a point where I truly optimized them and truly embodied living a life that supported the fundamental pillars of wellness. And now I look back on my story and I realize that that's why all those fancy, expensive protocols and all the gadgets that I have invested in over the years and all of the different gurus and experts, none of that really worked for me because my cells the whole time were being bathed in a constant soup of stress hormones because I hadn't address the accumulated stress and trauma or dialed in on the fundamental pillars of wellness while doing all those things. So please don't think that I'm telling you that, going to wellness clinics and doing IV protocols and addressing infections and toxins and neural rewiring gadgets like Brain Tap are of no value. I'm not saying that at all. They are absolutely of value. But they won't be of any value if we don't address the true root causes of root causes. And those are, I should say, accumulated stress, trauma, nervous system dysregulation in the chronic form, and low cellular energy that arises as a result of all of this. And to address these root causes, we have to prioritize the fundamental pillars of wellness. So like the nutrition, the rest, the sleep, the circadian rhythm balancing, the radical self-care, the daily habits, the mindset, really taking a look at our mental and emotional patterns and the factors in all of our life experiences that primed us to be a vulnerable host and that need to heal. Because if there's one critical lesson that I've learned in my journey, it's that any chronic condition, regardless of the label, Lyme, mold, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, autoimmunity, it doesn't matter. It will maintain its stronghold on us until the deepest layers of what set the dysfunction in motion in the first place are acknowledged and addressed. And this is the deep level, hard work that takes many years, decades, like myself, to realize. And that's what I mean by stop this healing insanity. It means if you are one that is currently in the vortex of chronic illness and you're pursuing the next best treatment protocol, but you haven't really looked at and addressed the stress and trauma in your life and dialed in on those fundamental pillars, like me, you're going to be spinning your wheels, caught in a vicious cycle of stress, illness, pain, life dysfunction, and spending a lot of money. But yet, I see so many people doing this. I read about it. I've seen it in Facebook groups. I see fellow wellness practitioners doing this, and it is utter insanity. We've all got to step back and go back to the basics. And that is where true sustainable wellness arises. So that is today's message of stop this healing insanity. If it resonated with you and it hits you home right here in the gut, then may this be an invitation to take a look at your own patterns and your own history and acknowledge the shifts that you need to make so that you can create the internal and external environments for anything else that you do on the protocol front to be efficacious, and ultimately for you to find your way back to wellness and having the vitality that you need to live a amazing life and build the business that you're striving to build. And that is what I have for you today. Thanks for listening. And that is a wrap for our very first episode of this series. If the message resonated with you, if you could be so kind to like this video, drop a comment below, and subscribe to our channel, that would be amazing. Your support inspires us and helps us to reach more people like you. And if you're ready to take a super deep dive into a truly holistic, trauma-informed approach for healing, wellness, life, and business success, then be sure to check out our programs at wellnesscodeacademy.com or use the link in the video information below. Until next time, cheers to your resilience, healing, and your success.